Welcome to this sacred space. I am Tiana, host of Mindful SoulStream, and today we embark on a journey of self-reflection. Before beginning today's journey, let's take a moment to ground oneself, opening one's heart and minds to receive the wisdom that this time together may bring. This meditation will help one center, align, and invite discernment and receptivity into one's experience. Let's start by finding a comfortable position where one can relax. If one is able, gently close one's eyes or lower one's gaze, softening one's focus. Begin with a deep breath in and hold it for a count of 4. And slowly exhale, releasing any tension from one's body. Let's do that again. Breathe in deeply, filling one's lungs. Hold and exhale, allowing oneself to settle into this moment. Now, bring one's attention to one's feet or the base of one's body. Imagine roots growing down from this point, deep into the earth. These roots are strong, grounding oneself and connecting oneself to the steady, supportive energy of the earth. With each breath, feel oneself becoming more anchored and present. As one continues breathing, shift one's focus to one's heart center. Picture a warm, radiant light glowing within one's chest. This light represents love, compassion, and oneness. With each inhale, feel this light expanding, filling one's entire being with warmth and acceptance. Now gently shift one's focus to one's third eye, the space between one's eyebrows. Imagine a soft indigo light illuminating this area, awakening one's discernment and receptivity. This light invites one to see clearly, to listen with an open mind, and to trust one's inner wisdom as one journeys together. Take another deep breath in, feeling both one's heart and third eye glowing brightly, connected and aligned. With one's exhale, let go of any distractions or resistance, allowing oneself to fully arrive in this moment. As one opens this sacred circle, set an intention for oneself. It could be a desire to learn, to heal, or simply to be present with whatever arises. Trust that you're in the right place and that this space is here to support one's growth and self-discovery. The circle is now open. You are now grounded. You are receptive. And you are now ready to receive. In today's episode, one is going to embark on a journey into the transformative power of self-reflection. a sacred practice that allows one to look within with honesty, curiosity, and compassion. Self-reflection is not a simple act of looking back. It is a tool for illuminating the present and creating alignment between who one is, who one has been, and who one is becoming. Now, the intention for this episode is to explore how self-reflection serves as a bridge to healing, growth, as well as alignment. It is a practice of stillness and analysis that invites one to examine the patterns, beliefs, and experiences that have shaped one's life. When approached with an open heart and with an open mind, self-reflection allows one to see beyond judgment, offering one clarity and wisdom. Through self-reflection, one discovers the beauty of one's resilience, the depth of one's authenticity, and the strength of one's spirit. It is a way to honor the experiences that have shaped one's life, while also opening the door to the infinite possibilities of who one can be. By looking inward, one aligns with the truth of one's being and creates a path forward that reflects one's highest purpose. As we move through today's episode together, I invite one to hold this intention close, to explore oneself with kindness, to embrace what one finds with understanding, and to trust that every step inward leads to greater harmony and connection. Let this time together be a gift, a moment of alignment with the divine essence within oneself, and a reminder of the incredible power that exists within. The power that one holds to grow, to heal, and to transform. So as we dive in, one will go over several different paths in which one could take in one's journey of self-reflection. The first is the power of forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is one of the most profound and liberating acts that one can offer to oneself and to others. This is not to say that it is about condoning harmful actions, nor erasing the impact of what has been done. Instead, forgiveness is an intentional release, a letting go of the emotional burdens that keep one tethered to pain and resentment. It is a pathway to freedom, to healing, and to growth. Now, through this practice of self-reflection, one creates the space to understand forgiveness on a deeper level. Self-reflection invites one to examine not just the actions of others, it invites us to also examine the actions of one's own responses, one's own beliefs, and one's own wounds. It allows one to step back and see the full picture, often revealing truths that are obscured by the intensity of one's emotions. When one reflects, one may begin to see the humanity in others, one's flaws, one's pain, and one's limitations. We start to realize that just as one has made mistakes, others too are navigating their own struggles, often acting from places of fear, misunderstanding, or unhealed wounds. This in no way excuses harmful behavior, though it can soften the edges of one's resentment, paving the way for compassion. Self-reflection also shines a light on the ways that one tends to hold oneself hostage in one's past actions, judgments, or perceived failures. How often does one replay moments of regret, wishing one could undo what cannot be undone? By reflecting with kindness and curiosity, one can see these moments not as defining oneself. Rather, one will start to see them as teaching oneself. Forgiving oneself becomes an act of reclaiming one's power, allowing oneself to move forward without the weight of shame or guilt. Now, forgiveness at its core is a gift that one has the ability to offer oneself. This does not mean forgetting, not at all. It simply means releasing. Through self-reflection, one can identify the areas where maybe one has been holding on too tightly. Maybe relationships or events that have kept oneself stuck. Or maybe there are ways that one can free oneself by choosing to forgive. When one forgives, one doesn't focus on the past, nor does one focus on changing it. Instead, one focuses on changing one's relationship to it. And in doing so, one opens the door to growth, healing, and a deeper connection with oneself and others. So let forgiveness be a bridge, guiding one from pain to peace. And let self-reflection be the practice that leads one there. Alright, so that being said, forgiveness is a transformative act that creates space for healing and peace. Whether one is forgiving others or one is forgiving oneself. Let me share some examples of how this practice can free oneself from emotional burdens and helps oneself reconnect with one's inner balance. Now, imagine holding on to resentment towards someone who wronged one in the past. Maybe it was a betrayal by a close friend, or maybe it was a hurtful comment from a loved one. Each time that one thinks of the event, one's body tenses, one's heart races, and the emotional wound feels as fresh as the day that it happened. The resentment becomes a weight that one carries everywhere, a constant reminder of the pain. Now, through self-reflection, one might begin to see this person's actions in a new light. Perhaps one acted out of one's own pain or limitations. Or perhaps one was unaware of the impact of one's words. While one's actions may not be excusable, acknowledging one's humanity allows one to release the need for retribution. By forgiving them, one isn't condoning another's behavior. One is choosing to free oneself from the emotional grip it has had on oneself. This act of forgiveness creates space for inner peace and liberates one from being defined by the pain. Now, consider those moments when one has been one's own harshest critic. Maybe one said something that one regretted. Maybe one made a mistake that hurt someone. Or maybe one failed to meet a standard that one set for oneself. Now, this guilt can linger. And when that does, the inner dialogue becomes a loop of self-judgment. Over time, this can erode one's sense of self-worth, making it tricky to move forward. Through self-reflection, one might uncover the reasons behind one's actions: fear, inexperience, or simply being human. By sitting with these truths, one might begin to see that one is not oneself's mistakes. Forgiving oneself becomes an act of compassion, allowing oneself to release the guilt and reclaim one's power. Now, this creates room for self-acceptance and growth, as one learns from the experience without being weighed down by it. Now, in both cases, forgiveness is like setting down a heavy bag that one has been carrying for far too long. It doesn't erase what had transpired. Rather, it changes one's relationship to it. It allows oneself to step into the present moment without being pulled back into the pain of the past. The energy once consumed by resentment or guilt can now be redirected toward growth, creativity, and connection. When one forgives, it is not only freeing oneself from emotional burdens, one is creating the conditions for inner peace and alignment. It's a reminder that while one can't control what has happened, one always has the power to choose how one moves forward. Now, another form of self-reflection is emotional resilience. Now, emotional resilience is one's ability to navigate life's ups and downs with strength and grace, bouncing back from challenges and learning from them rather than being defeated by them. Resilience doesn't mean that one avoids hardship. It means that one grows through it, becoming stronger and more compassionate along the way. And one of the most powerful tools for building this resilience is self-reflection. When one takes time to reflect on past experiences, one creates space to process what transpired, how one responded to it, and what one learned from it. Now, this practice will allow one to see the challenges that one had faced, not as setbacks. Rather, one will begin to see them as opportunities for growth. Through reflection, one can begin to recognize one's own strength, the ways one has adapted, and the inner resources that one can tap into, even if one wasn't quite aware of them at the time. For example, think about a time in one's life when one faced a significant challenge. Maybe it was a loss, a tricky decision, or an unexpected change. In the moment, it may have felt overwhelming, as though one wouldn't make it through. However, looking back on it now, one will be able to see how that experience shaped oneself. Maybe it taught one the beauty of patience, courage, or a new way of thinking. Self-reflection helps oneself connect these dots, showing one how each challenge has contributed to one's growth. Now, beyond understanding the past, self-reflection equips one to face future challenges with greater resilience. By recognizing the patterns and triggers in one's emotional responses, one can prepare oneself to navigate similar situations with more clarity and intention. One might ask oneself, what strengths did I rely on the last time that I faced something so tricky? How can I use those strengths again? What new tools have I gained since then? Now, through this process, one can also build a deeper sense of trust in oneself. One can start to believe on a fundamental level that one is capable of handling whatever is presented before oneself throughout one's journey. Now, this trust doesn't mean that one doesn't feel fear or doubt. It simply means that one knows that those emotions are part of the journey and that one has the resilience to move through them. Resilience is not about being unshaken. It's about learning to bend without breaking. Self-reflection helps one see that even in one's moments of vulnerability, there is strength. It reminds one that every challenge that one has faced has contributed to the person that one has become, and that every step forward brings one closer to the person that one is becoming. So the next time that one finds oneself reflecting on a tricky moment, remember to ask oneself, what did this experience teach me about my own strength? How did it help me grow? In these reflections, one may discover a well of resilience that one didn't know that one had. A reminder that one is capable of facing life's challenges with strength, with grace, and with unwavering courage. Now let's look at some tools for reflecting on resilience. To truly connect with and build emotional resilience, one can use tools like journaling and guided reflection prompts. Now, these practices will allow one to dive deeper into one's experiences, uncovering the lessons and strengths one has gained along the way. I'm going to share a few ways that one can begin exploring one's own resilience, starting with journaling. Now, journaling is a powerful way to process one's emotions and reflect on the challenges that one has faced. It helps one see one's journey more clearly and recognize the ways that one has grown. Set aside some time, some quiet time. Grab a notebook or open a digital journal and explore some prompts, such as the ones following. Think of a challenge that one has overcome. What was the experience? And what was the impact to oneself at the time? What strengths or qualities did one rely on to move through that experience? How did that challenge shape the person that one is today? And if one had to face a similar challenge now, how would one approach it differently, knowing what one has learned? Write without judgment or pressure. Let one's thoughts flow freely and allow the process to guide one into insights that one might not have noticed before. Now, if journaling feels too structured, one can also try reflecting on resilience through meditation or quiet thought. You can use some of these prompts to guide you or create your own. Close one's eyes and take a few deep breaths. Bring to mind a specific moment when one has faced a challenge. What emotions did one feel in that moment? What thoughts came up? As one reflects, ask oneself, what helped me get through this? Was it inner strength? Support from others? Or was it something else? Imagine one's past self during that challenge. What words of encouragement or wisdom would one offer to them now, knowing how far one has come? These reflections don't just help one understand the past, they strengthen one's ability to face the future. By recognizing the resilience that one has already demonstrated, one can remind oneself of the incredible inner resources that one carries. Now, another helpful practice is to track patterns of growth over time. You can do this by reflecting on moments when resilience helped one grow, and look for themes. For example, do certain situations consistently bring out one's strength? Are there any recurring lessons that challenges have taught oneself? What resources, whether external or internal, have supported one's resilience the most? When one documents these reflections, they often become a tangible reminder of one's ability to persevere and adapt. This practice can be particularly powerful during moments when one feels stuck or uncertain. Now, a reminder about resilience is to remember that resilience is not about perfection or always knowing the answers. It's about showing up, learning, and moving forward, even when the path feels unclear. By using these tools, one not only reflects on the resilience that one has shown in the past, one is also building the foundation for the resilience that one will need in the future. Now let's jump into how self-reflection impacts physical well-being. The body-mind connection. Now, one's body and mind are deeply interconnected, constantly influencing one another in ways that may not always be noticeable. When one is caught in emotional or mental turmoil, one's physical health often feels the effects. Stress, tension, disrupted sleep, and even physical comfort can all stem from unprocessed emotions or unresolved thoughts. Self-reflection offers a powerful way to bridge this connection, bringing mental clarity and emotional healing that directly impacts one's physical well-being. Think about a time when one felt emotionally overwhelmed. Perhaps during a conflict, a period of uncertainty, or while holding on to unresolved guilt or anger. How did one's body respond? Maybe one's muscles felt tight. Maybe one's stomach was just turning. Or maybe one struggled to fall asleep at night. These physical symptoms are one's body's way of signaling that something needs attention. Through self-reflection, one can create the space to listen to these signals and address the root causes. For example, reducing stress. By reflecting on the sources of stress in one's life, one can identify patterns or triggers that are contributing to it. Once one recognizes these stressors, one can take actionable steps to manage them, whether that's setting boundaries, adjusting expectations, or practicing mindfulness. This awareness not only calms the mind, it also reduces the physical effects of stress, such as tension headaches, elevated heart rates, or fatigue. Improving sleep is another example. Emotional and mental clutter can often keep one tossing and turning at night. Self-reflection helps one process unresolved thoughts before bedtime, creating a sense of closure for the day. Journaling, meditative reflections, or gratitude practices are especially helpful for releasing the mental noise that disrupts sleep, allowing the body to rest more deeply. Another example is enhancing physical health. Now, emotional healing can also lead to better physical health overall. When one processes tricky emotions such as anger, sadness, or fear, one's less likely to carry them as physical tension or chronic stress. Over time, this can improve immune function, it can lower blood pressure, and it can even boost energy levels. One of the most profound aspects of the mind-body connection, for me anyhow, is how it invites one to view one's body as one's partner within one's well-being. When one reflects on one's emotions and thoughts, one is not just healing the mind, one is also creating harmony within the body. And when one cares for the body through movement, nourishment, and rest, one can create a clearer and calmer space for the mind to thrive. Here's a practice to connect the mind and the body. To integrate self-reflection with physical well-being, try this simple practice. Find a quiet space and close one's eyes. Take a few deep breaths, focusing on the sensations within one's body. Ask oneself, what am I feeling right now, emotionally and physically? Where in my body do I notice any tension or discomfort or the feeling of energy? Now reflect on any thoughts or emotions that come up. Is this tension tied to something unresolved within one's mind? Set an intention to release or address these feelings. One might say to oneself, I honor what my body is telling me, and I am willing to let go of what no longer serves me. Through self-reflection, one gives oneself the gift of clarity and healing, allowing both the mind and the body to come into alignment. When one nurtures this connection, one creates a foundation of wellness that supports every aspect of one's life. Now we're going to talk about mindfulness and reflection practices for holistic wellness. To nurture the mind-body connection and support holistic wellness, it's essential to incorporate practices that combine mindfulness and self-reflection. Now, these practices invite oneself to slow down, tune into oneself, and create space for healing and alignment. So let's discuss a few examples and approaches that one can explore. The first one is the body scan meditation. Now, the body scan is a mindfulness practice that is said to help one to connect with one's physical sensations while reflecting on one's emotional and mental origins. Now, how do we do this? Find a comfortable position, either seated or lying down. Close one's eyes and take a few deep breaths to center oneself. Starting at the top of one's head, bring one's attention to each part of one's body, moving slowly down to one's toes. Notice any areas of tension, discomfort, or any feelings of ease. As one encounters these tensions or discomforts, ask oneself, what might this part of my body be holding? Are there any emotions or thoughts connected to it? Gently breathe into those areas, imagining the tension softening and releasing with each exhale. Now, this practice integrates mindfulness with self-reflection, helping one identify and process emotions that have been stored within the body. Now, the next one is reflective journaling with breath work. Now, pairing journaling with mindful breathing enhances both mental clarity and emotional healing. Try this. Begin with a few minutes of deep, slow breathing. Focus on the rhythm of one's breath, allowing one's mind to settle. Then, journal about some prompts that you prepared ahead of time, such as, what is one thing that my body has been trying to tell me lately? Are there any unresolved emotions or thoughts that I've been carrying? How might I address them? What can I release today to feel lighter and more aligned? Conclude with a moment of gratitude for one's body and mind, acknowledging one's partnership in one's well-being. This combined practice brings a reflective and grounded approach to wellness, bridging the mental and the physical. Now, this third one is movement with intention. Mindful movement practices like yoga or Tai Chi or even walking meditations are excellent for aligning the mind and the body. Now, during these practices, we want to make sure that we're focusing on one's breath and sensations within one's body as one moves. Set an intention for one session, such as, I am releasing what no longer serves me, or I am inviting clarity and balance into my being. Use these movements as a way to reflect on one's emotional state, noticing what shifts or releases as one progresses. Now we move into evening reflection rituals. Now, creating a simple evening ritual can help process the day's events and prepare one's mind and body for restful sleep. Here's an example. Light a candle or simply sit in a dim, quiet space. Take a few moments to breathe deeply and reflect on the day that just passed. Ask oneself, what emotions or experiences stood out today? How did I respond to them? Write down one thing that one is grateful for and one thing that one is ready to let go of before tomorrow. Conclude with a brief affirmation such as, I release the day with peace and gratitude, and I'm ready to welcome tomorrow. Alright, and this last example is affirmation and visualization practice. This practice integrates mindfulness, self-reflection, and intention setting. Sit in a quiet space and take a few deep breaths. Reflect on an area of one's life where one seeks more balance or clarity. Create a simple affirmation for this area, such as, I am open to healing and growth in my relationships. Or, I trust my body's wisdom and I care for it with love. Visualize oneself living in alignment with this affirmation and imagine what it feels like to embody this truth wholly. Now, each of these practices combines mindfulness and reflection to support one's mind, body, and spirit. By dedicating time to these moments, one is creating a ripple effect of wellness that extends into all areas of one's life. Remember, even small, consistent practices can have a profound impact over time. Now, let's discuss authenticity and alignment. Living true to oneself. Now, authenticity is the courage to show up in the world as one's true self, while alignment is the practice of living in harmony with one's core values and beliefs. Together, one forms the foundation for a life of integrity and fulfillment. We may be asking oneself right now, well, how does one uncover and embody one's authentic self? The answer lies in self-reflection. Self-reflection is the bridge between who one thinks one is and who one truly is. It's the process of looking inward, asking meaningful questions, and uncovering the values, desires, and truths that define oneself. Through self-reflection, one can begin to strip away the layers of societal expectations, limiting beliefs, and the external pressures that have clouded one's sense of self. When one understands oneself on a deeper level, one is able to live more authentically. Authenticity doesn't mean perfection. It means embracing the wholeness of who one is, including one's strengths, vulnerabilities, as well as imperfections. It's about making choices that honor one's truth, even when those choices are challenging. Now, what is the role of alignment? Living in alignment means letting one's actions reflect one's core values. It's about ensuring that the way one moves through the world is consistent with what one believes and who one aspires to be. When one's actions are in harmony with one's values, one feels a sense of integrity and fulfillment. On the other hand, when there's a disconnect, when one acts in ways that contradicts one's beliefs, one often feels unfulfilled, restless, or even out of control. For example, let's say one of one's core values is compassion. However, one finds oneself engaging in self-critical thoughts or harsh judgments towards others. Through self-reflection, one might recognize this disconnect and explore ways to bring one's actions back into alignment with compassion, starting with oneself. This shift not only deepens one's authenticity, but also fosters a sense of peace and congruence in one's life. Okay, so here's a self-reflective practice to explore one's own authenticity and alignment. First, we're going to identify one's core values. Take time to reflect on what truly matters to oneself. Ask oneself questions such as, What principles guide my decisions? What brings me a sense of purpose or fulfillment? Now, write down 3 to 5 core values. Next, examine one's alignment. Reflect on how one's daily actions and choices align with these values. Are there areas where one feels out of sync? What changes could one make to realign one's actions with one's values? And last, celebrate authenticity. Think of a moment when one feels fully like oneself. What was happening during this time? What allows one to show up authentically in that situation? How can one bring more of that energy into one's life? Now the ripple effect. When one lives authentically and in alignment, one not only creates a life that feels true to oneself, one also inspires others to do the same. Authenticity is contagious. It invites connection, trust, and a deeper sense of belonging, both with oneself and with the world around oneself. Self-reflection is the key to this process. By taking the time to understand oneself and align one's actions with one's values, one creates a life that feels whole, grounded, and meaningful. And in doing so, one honors the unique essence that one could bring to this world. Okay, so I'm going to share a personal example of my own journey of embracing the power to be seen. So for much of my life, I carried an unspoken fear, a fear of being truly seen. It was safer, or so I thought, to stay in the background, to support others from the sidelines, rather than stepping into the spotlight myself. I had convinced myself that my role was to amplify others' voices, to help them shine, while I remained quietly in the shadows. At the time, I didn't recognize this as fear of my own power. I believed it to be humility, perhaps even selflessness. However, through self-reflection, I began to see the truth behind all of this. This wasn't humility. In fact, it was fear. Fear of what it might mean to step into my own light, to own my strengths and share them with the world. What if I failed? What if I succeeded and couldn't handle the pressure? What if being seen meant being judged? These questions kept me small, dimming my light even when my soul longed to shine. The turning point came when I realized that hiding wasn't serving anyone, not me, and of course not the people that I had hoped to support. By holding myself back, I wasn't protecting myself. I was denying the world the gifts that I had to offer. I began to reflect on this pattern with compassion, understanding that this fear was born from past experiences of rejection and misunderstandings. However, I also started to understand that this no longer had to define me. As I slowly started to step out of the shadows through music, creativity, and connecting with others, I discovered a new truth. My light isn't meant to overshadow others. It's meant to be a beacon, a source of inspiration and connection. By embracing my power and allowing myself to be seen, I create space for others to do the same. And that is how authenticity becomes a ripple effect. When one person steps into their truth, it encourages others to follow. It encourages them to do just the same. Now, here are some reflective exercises that one can try if you happen to struggle with stepping into your own light. The first part is to identify your light. Reflect on the unique strengths, gifts, or passions that make one who one is. What lights one up? What is one naturally drawn to share with others? Once you identify this, now it's time to acknowledge one's fears. Consider any fears or doubts that holds one back from stepping into one's light. Ask oneself questions such as, what am I afraid might happen if I allow myself to fully be seen? Are these fears rooted in my present reality? Or do they come from my past experiences? And once you acknowledge your fears, it's time to take a small step forward. Choose one way to share one's light with the world, no matter how small. It might be sharing a creative project, speaking one's truth in a conversation, or simply acknowledging one's strengths to oneself. Notice how it feels to take this step. Stepping into one's light isn't about being perfect or fearless. It's about being willing to show up as one's true self, even when it feels vulnerable. By embracing one's power, one is not only honoring one's authenticity, it also inspires others to embrace theirs. Remember, one's light is not just for oneself, it is a gift to share with the entire universe. Alright, we're coming up on the last two examples of self-reflection. This one is reconnecting with the child within. This is inner child healing. Alright, inner child healing is the process of reconnecting with the younger parts of oneself. The child who one once was, who still resides within oneself. This inner child carries one's earliest experiences, both joyful and painful, shaping the beliefs, patterns, and emotions that one carries into adulthood. Many of our current behaviors and reactions can be traced back to wounds or unmet needs from childhood. Self-reflection is a powerful tool for inner child healing because it allows one to gently examine these earlier experiences and uncover how they influence our present-day lives. It invites one to revisit those moments with curiosity and compassion, not to dwell on them, rather to understand them and offer the healing that one may have lacked. Now, often, past wounds manifest as fears, insecurities, or limiting beliefs. For example, a child who felt unheard may grow into an adult who struggles to express one's needs. A child who experienced rejection might carry a fear of abandonment in relationships. A child who was taught to suppress emotions may find it tricky to connect with one's feelings as an adult. Through self-reflection, one begins to identify these patterns and their origins. This awareness is the first step in healing, as it allows one to see their behaviors not as flaws, but begin to see them as protective mechanisms that were formed during a time of vulnerability. By acknowledging and accepting these parts of ourselves, one can begin to reparent the inner child, offering them love, safety, and validation that one needed and may not have received. Now, when one heals one's inner child, one can reclaim the parts of oneself that were hidden or silenced. One learns to meet one's needs in healthy, nurturing ways, breaking free from cycles of self-doubt or fear. This process is deeply empowering as it allows one to take control of one's narrative, no longer bound by the wounds of the past. For example, reflecting on a memory of feeling unheard might inspire one to practice assertive communication, ensuring that one's voice is no longer silenced. Revisiting a moment of rejection could help one recognize the love and connection one's capable of offering oneself, regardless of external validation. Or acknowledging suppressed emotions might give one permission to feel and express oneself fully, fostering emotional resilience. Now, if this is something that you find to be tricky, here's a reflective exercise. First, connect with your inner child. Close your eyes and visualize oneself as a child. Picture this younger version of oneself, how one looked, how one felt, and what one might have needed at that time. After connecting, reflect on a wound. Bring to mind a specific memory or recurring belief that stems from one's childhood. Ask oneself questions such as, what was I feeling at that moment? What did I need that I didn't receive? Once you reflect on the wound, offer reparenting. Speak to one's inner child as one would speak to someone that one loves dearly. Say things such as, I see you, and I understand how you felt. You are safe now, and you are deeply loved. Lastly, journal your insights. Write down what one experienced during this practice. What did one's inner child need? And how can one honor that need in one's present life? The inner child healing is a journey of rediscovery, one that allows oneself to reclaim the joy, creativity, as well as authenticity that may have been stifled. Through self-reflection, one creates a bridge between the past and the present, offering oneself the gift of healing and self-empowerment. Remember, it's never too late to give one's inner child the love and support that child deserved. Here's a reflection of my own. A reflection that brought me to rediscover and reconnect with my neglected inner child. There was a time in my life when I felt deeply disconnected, carrying a weight that I couldn't quite name. It was only through self-reflection that I began to understand where this weight was coming from. It was the voice of my inner child, the part of me that had felt neglected and unheard for so many years. As a child, I often felt unseen, my emotions dismissed or misunderstood. I was forced to grow up quickly, taking on responsibilities that no child should have to bear. Though I recognized the benefits that I received from this childhood, as a child, I learned to stay quiet, to shrink myself, and to hide my needs because expressing them often felt futile. This version of me, the small, tender child within, carried so much pain, confusion, and longing for validation. For a long time, I avoided this part of myself, afraid of what might surface if I let those memories and emotions come forward. But the more that I suppressed them, it felt like the heavier they became, showing up in my relationships, my sense of self-worth, and even my ability to trust. I knew that I couldn't move forward without turning inward to reconnect with this forgotten part of myself. When I had finally allowed my inner child's voice to come through, I realized that she wasn't asking for much. She just wanted to be acknowledged. She wanted to be told that her feelings mattered, that she was safe, and that she was loved. By giving her this space, I started to heal. I began to see that the neglect and the pain that she had endured didn't define her, and it didn't have to define me. I could rewrite the narrative, giving both of us the love and the care that we both deserved. This journey of reconnecting with my inner child has been transformative. It's taught me to be more patient with myself, to honor my needs, and to embrace the parts of myself that felt vulnerable. It's a reminder that no matter how painful our past may have been, we have the power to heal. We have the power to redefine it. And we have the power to reclaim our truth. Now, to help one connect with one's own inner child, let's take a moment to reflect together. Create a safe space. Find a quiet, comfortable place where one won't be disturbed. Close one's eyes and take a few deep breaths, grounding oneself in the present moment. Visualize your inner child. Picture oneself as a child, perhaps around an age when one felt particularly vulnerable or misunderstood. Imagine this child standing before oneself. What do they look like? What emotions does one sense coming from them? Acknowledge their experience. Take a moment to sit with this child and listen. What might they want to say? What feelings or experiences does that child need to share? Let them express themselves fully, without judgment. Offer compassion and reassurance. Speak to one's inner child with kindness and love. You might say things such as, "I see you and I hear you. I'm so sorry for the times you felt neglected or unheard. You are safe now, and I'm here for you. You are loved exactly as you are." Invite healing. Imagine holding this child in a warm, comforting embrace. Visualize their pain softening and their light beginning to shine again. Let them know they are free to grow. They're free to play, and they're free to dream. Journal your experience. After the reflection, write down any insights or emotions that came up. What did one's inner child need? How can one honor those needs in one's present life? Connecting with one's inner child is a sacred act of self-love. It allows one to reclaim the parts of oneself that may have been left behind. offering them the care and compassion they always deserved. Remember, healing is not about erasing the past. It's about transforming it, and in doing so, rediscovering the joy and the wholeness that have always been within. And the last rule of self-reflection that we will discuss today is one of the most important, and that is creating healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are essential for maintaining emotional, mental, and physical well-being. They define where one ends and the other meets, allowing one to protect one's energy, honor one's needs, and foster relationships that are rooted in mutual respect and understanding. However, identifying where boundaries need to be established or strengthened often requires one to pause and reflect deeply on one's experiences, patterns, and relationships. Self-reflection provides the clarity one needs to recognize areas in one's life where boundaries are either missing or too rigid. It's an opportunity to ask oneself, where do I feel drained, overwhelmed, or resentful in my life? Are there people or situations that consistently push me beyond my limits? How do I respond when someone crosses my boundaries? Do I speak up or do I stay silent? By answering these questions honestly, one starts to see patterns that point to boundary imbalances. For example, if one notices a reoccurring sense of burnout in a particular relationship, it might indicate that one's giving more than one's receiving. If one feels anxious or guilty about saying no, it could be a sign that one's boundaries need strengthening in that area. Now, boundaries are not just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to oneself. They allow one to prioritize one's mental, emotional, and physical health by creating space for rest, self-care, as well as personal growth. Without boundaries, one risks overextending oneself, which can lead to exhaustion, resentment, and even physical symptoms like stress and fatigue. For example, emotional boundaries. Protecting one's emotional space might mean limiting interactions with individuals who drain one's energy, or respecting one's own need for solitude after a busy day. Mental boundaries. Establishing mental boundaries might involve saying no to overcommitting one's time, or stepping away from debates that leave one feeling depleted. Physical boundaries. Physical boundaries could mean honoring one's body needs for rest, nourishment, and movement, rather than pushing oneself to meet unrealistic expectations. To identify and create healthier boundaries, let's try this reflective exercise. Think about the people, situations, or commitments in one's life. Which ones energize oneself and which ones drain oneself? Make a list to visualize where one's energy is going. Recognize patterns. Reflect on any recurring feelings of resentment, exhaustion, or frustration. These emotions often signal that a boundary has been crossed. Define your limits. Ask oneself, what am I willing to tolerate? And where do I need to draw the line? What do I need to feel safe, respected, and balanced? Practice assertive communication. Once you've identified where boundaries need to be set, reflect on how one can communicate them with kindness and clarity. For instance, one might say, "I value our relationship. However, I need more time for myself right now." Healthy boundaries are not about creating distance. They're about fostering connection and respect. When one establishes boundaries, one teaches others how to treat oneself, and one also shows oneself that one's needs matter. This act of self-respect has a ripple effect, creating a life that feels more aligned, more balanced, and more fulfilling. Remember, boundaries are not fixed. They evolve as one grows and as one's relationships shift. Through self-reflection, one stays attuned to what one needs and ensures that one's boundaries continue to support one's well-being. By honoring one's limits, one creates the space to thrive emotionally, mentally, as well as physically. Now, here are some practical steps for reflecting on and improving your boundaries. Creating and maintaining healthy boundaries is an ongoing process that requires intention and self-awareness. The first example is identifying one's energy drains and boosters. Take a moment to reflect on one's life. Write down the activities, the people, or commitments that leave one feeling drained, resentful, or overextended. Then list the ones that energize and uplift oneself. Then look at the drains list and consider where a boundary might be needed. For example, if a friend frequently asks for favors that leaves oneself feeling overwhelmed, reflect on how one can set a limit with kindness and clarity. Another one is to pay attention to emotional clues. One's emotions are often the first indicators of boundary issues. Think about a recent situation where one felt frustration, guilt, or resentment. Ask oneself, what triggered this feeling? Did I agree to something that I didn't prefer to do? Was I honoring one's own needs, or was I prioritizing somebody else's? Use this insight to define what one needs in similar situations moving forward. For example, if saying yes out of guilt led to resentment, practice saying no with kindness or suggest an alternative that feels more manageable. The next one is evaluating your time commitments. Time is one of the most precious resources, and overcommitting can quickly lead to burnout. Reflect on one's schedule for the past week. Were there moments where one felt rushed, stressed, or unable to focus on oneself? Set boundaries around one's time. For example, limit how many social or work-related commitments that one takes in a week. Block off time in one's calendar for rest, hobbies, or self-care, and treat it as non-negotiable. Another one is practicing small acts of boundary setting. Setting boundaries doesn't have to be daunting. It can start with small, manageable steps. For example, if someone interrupts one's work time with non-urgent request, kindly let them know you'll respond later. You might say something such as, "I'm in the middle of something right now. However, I'd be happy to help after I'm finished." Reflect on one area of one's life where setting a small boundary could make a big difference. Start there and then build confidence as one goes. Another one could be revisiting and revising boundaries regularly. Boundaries evolve just as we do. and self-reflection helps one stay aligned with what one needs. Here's an exercise. At the end of each week or month, ask oneself, did I honor my boundaries this week? Were there moments where I felt stretched too thin? What adjustments can I make to better protect my energy and well-being? Use these insights to fine-tune one's boundaries, ensuring that they continue to serve and support oneself. And the most important of them all, celebrate your progress. Boundary setting can feel challenging, especially if it's new territory. Celebrate the moments where oneself honored one's limits. Reflect on a recent time that one set a boundary, no matter how small. How did it feel to prioritize one's needs? Reinforce this practice by acknowledging the positive impact it had on one's well-being as well as relationships. Remember, setting and maintaining boundaries is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. Each step that one takes to protect one's energy, honor one's needs, and communicate one's limits brings oneself closer to a life that feels balanced and aligned. Through self-reflection and intentional action, one has the power to create the space that one needs to thrive. Alright, as we wrap up today's episode on the importance of self-reflection, I'd like to leave one with some questions to guide one's personal exploration. These prompts are here to help one connect with the themes that we've discussed and deepen one's relationship with oneself. Feel free to journal one's thoughts, meditate on them, or simply let them inspire oneself throughout the week. Alright, starting with the first question. What recent experience taught one something about oneself? Reflect on a moment, big or small, that offered insight into one's patterns, strengths, or areas for growth. What did this experience reveal about who one is? Are there any areas in one's life where one feels disconnected or out of alignment? Take a moment to scan one's relationships, work, and personal habits. Where might there be a gap between one's actions and one's values? How could self-reflection help one bridge that gap? How can self-reflection help one identify where forgiveness, resilience, or boundaries are needed? Think about a challenge one's currently facing. What role could forgiveness of oneself or someone else play in releasing emotional burdens? How might reflecting on past experiences build one's resilience for the future? Are there boundaries that need to be set to protect one's well-being? What part of one's shadow self is ready to be acknowledged and honored? Consider whether there is a quality or pattern within oneself that one has been suppressing or even avoiding. How might embracing this aspect bring one closer to wholeness? What values guide one's life? And are one's daily actions in alignment with them? Reflect on one's core values and how they show up in one's choices. Are there adjustments one can make to bring more authenticity and alignment into one's day-to-day life? What does one's inner child need from oneself right now? Connect with the younger version of oneself. What wounds or unmet needs from one's past are asking for one's attention? how can one offer oneself's inner child the love, the safety, or the reassurance that they deserve? Take one's time with these questions. There's no right or wrong way to explore them. Self-reflection is a deeply personal journey, and every insight, no matter how small, is a step towards greater healing and alignment. As we prepare to close this sacred space, let's take a moment to reflect, integrate, and ground oneself. This is one's time to honor the insights that one has gained and carry them forward with intention. Let's find a comfortable position, and if one's able, gently close one's eyes. Take a deep breath in and hold it for a count of 4. And then exhale slowly. Let's do that again. Breathe in deeply, welcoming a sense of calm, and hold. And release, letting go of any tension and or resistance. Now bring one's attention to one's heart center. Imagine a warm, glowing light there, radiating with the energy of self-awareness, compassion, and understanding. This light represents everything one has uncovered today. One's reflections on forgiveness, resilience, boundaries, and authenticity. Feel it growing brighter with each breath, filling oneself with a sense of peace and alignment. As this light expands, let it flow through one's entire being, one's mind, one's body, and one's spirit. It carries the wisdom one has gathered, reminding oneself that one is capable of deep healing and growth. Allow this light to ground oneself, connecting one to the present moment and to the truth of who one truly is. Now take a moment to set an intention for oneself. It could be a commitment to continue reflecting, to honor one's boundaries, or to embrace one's inner child, or simply to show oneself more compassion. Whatever feels most resonant, hold that intention gently in one's mind and heart. Take one more deep breath in, letting this intention settle deeply within oneself. And exhale, releasing anything that no longer serves oneself. When one is ready, slowly begin to bring one's awareness back to one's surroundings. Let's wiggle some fingers. Let's wiggle some toes. Gently stretch if it feels good. And when it feels right, open one's eyes. Know that the work one has done today is powerful and meaningful. You've taken a step closer to alignment, to authenticity, and to honoring all parts of oneself. Carry this energy with oneself as one moves forward, trusting in one's journey and trusting in one's capacity for growth. Thank you for joining me in this sacred space today. Until next time, May one walk with compassion, may one walk with courage, and may one walk with clarity. Namaste. I embrace the journey of self-reflection with courage and compassion. By looking within, I uncover the wisdom, the strength, and the light that guides me towards healing and alignment. Every step inward is a step towards wholeness, authenticity, and peace. Carry this affirmation with oneself, and remember, self-reflection is not just about understanding who one has been. It's about stepping into the incredible person one is becoming. One who holds the power to transform, the power to grow, and the power to thrive. Namaste.